Yep.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm with survivor Donna, who is a friend of mine. We met, what,
Last Christmas,
last Christmas? I thought it was before then. I know we've been Facebook friends longer than that.
almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah. And we are at Presidio La Bahia.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
It's beautiful. I guess this is the mission behind us, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so proud to film here that they let us, because it's such a beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful night. And I know we've been trying to get your story, but we got rained out once, something else.
I think it's rained ever since we tried.
Yeah, so today it was meant to be because it's a beautiful day.
Yes.
So let's talk about you and who you are. I know that you're in the grooming business.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a love for animals.
Yes.
So explain to me what you do.
Oh, well, I go to people's houses instead of them come to me. That way, it's more for the comfort of the dog. They're in their own environment, and I also get to have conversation and meet new people, and I usually tell them my story.
So you just get to travel around and welcome into people's homes because of their pets.
Yes.
Did you always have a love for pets, even when you were growing up?
I've always had dogs ever since I can remember. My dad was a dog lover, so of course it rubbed off on me.
Yeah.
Not my mother.
She didn't like pets.
Nope.
She wanted a clean house, no dog hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with dogs probably when I was about 4 years old. I had a little rat terrier. I lived overseas at that time. My dad was in the oil field, and but he was in a real bad wreck. And when he came back, then my sister was born a couple of years later, and
So do you think having your rat terrier around, your little dog, was that some sort of comfort to you? Did that become nurturing to you since your father was out of the picture, off in the oil field?
I believe so. I mean, they have very unconditional love, so that's where I really got my learning of love.
So who's with us today?
This is Arti.
Arti.
Arti, for short. His name is Artemis of Artizar, which means gift of morning star.
Gift of Morning Star. And he is a full-blown standard poodle?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he's a beautiful dog.
Thank you.
His gray, I guess, charcoal gray.
Charcoal gray, yeah. That's what I would say. Or blue.
Blue, yeah.
Or blue steel.
It's a beautiful color.
Thank you. I think he knows it too.
Yeah. Well, he's doing great sitting here. I know he's going to rest, and as we start to talk and come into the moment, probably he'll feed off of our spirit and our energy. And
Yes.
be able to relax. So let's start out. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in Florida, St. Augustine to be exact, and not real for sure what happened there, but I don't think I lived there. I believe my grandparents used to live there, and I think my mom was just visiting. I'm not real for sure of that story part, but then we came back to Victoria. I've lived in Victoria almost all my life.
Victoria, Texas.
Victoria, Texas, yes. I keep forgetting that I'm in Goliad.
Yeah, well, and our YouTube viewers are literally, YouTube, you can connect around the world. So when you say Victoria, there's probably,
Oh, yeah.
That's why I always say
Victoria, Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in Goliad, Texas right now. But
Yes.
yes, you were not born, but you moved and grew up in Victoria,
Yes.
Texas. So let's go back for a minute, Donna.
Okay.
Let's just start. Let's just get it all out there. I know that you're a survivor of sexual abuse.
Yes.
So take me back for a minute. I don't like to spend a lot of time or a lot of energy on the abuse itself. I know that what you're sharing with me is a truth, but I want to kind of hear it from your perspective, a part of you, what molded and made you and brought you to where you're at today. So take me
Okay.
back there for a minute, if you will.
Okay, well, we were living here in Victoria, and my grandparents from Florida came to stay with us, and we had gone to go visit his sister in Bay City, and for some reason I got put in the same room with my grandpa and my sister. Me and my sister shared a bed.
And how old are you?
I want to say I was maybe 10 or 11. I'm not real for sure on the age. I think I kind of blocked a lot of it out.
And that's very common, myself included. Lots of survivors. We can certain smells, certain places, certain friends in a certain grade.
Yeah.
Our clothes we're wearing. Sometimes we remember the strangest things, but we don't exactly remember our age.
Exactly.
So I
Well, I was
understand.
in the 5th grade, so if that has, I don't know what age you are when you're in the 5th grade, but he approached me and, wanting me to touch him and stuff, and that kind of freaked me out. But I didn't think nothing of it. I just thought, really I didn't know what was going on as far as, I just knew I didn't like it. And then when they were living with us at our house, he would come into my room and do these things to me. We didn't actually have any sexual intercourse, but just...
He would pleasure himself and
yes,
use you for that.
And it just made me feel real dirty and stuff like that. One day my grandma did catch him in the act, but nothing was said. She just kind of like wiped it under the rug, and then I couldn't deal with it anymore. I didn't want to be home with him. I didn't want my sister to be around him.
Was your sister also being sexually
I don't know.
abused by him?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. She's never said anything.
So in that moment of him, I always like, because when you can sit down with a survivor and they'll openly share and talk like you are with us, I think there's more to educating people and inspiring people, really what we don't learn about through television or the media or at school. We're taught to speak out, we're taught to seek help, we're taught to tell someone. But what we really don't talk about is that moment. Did you have an out-of-body experience? What was your body and mind, soul way of protecting itself?
I just shut off, just like...
You were frozen?
Yeah. And then, like it's not really happening, I just go somewhere else.
And so as it continued, and is that when the fear began to build up? You heard the doorknob turn, you knew it was a certain time at night, you knew it was bedtime or bath time, and you anticipated what was going to happen, so the fear was already set inside of you?
Yes. And eventually, I didn't know how to tell my mother as far as, letting anybody else know, because I knew my grandma knew, but she didn't say anything. I didn't know how to tell her because that was her dad. And so I just wrote it. I wrote everything down that happened to me, and I gave it to her. And she came back into my room, and she gave me a hug, and she said, "Oh my God, I didn't know this was happening, and don't worry, I'm going to take care of this." And so the only thing she did tell me was not to tell my dad, because she was afraid what he might do.
He'd kill him.
Yeah.
Or hurt him.
Mm-hmm. So, but she went upstairs and she told him, and
she told your dad?
She told your grandpa. Yes, my grandpa.
That you had spoken out.
Yes. And so a couple of days had gone by, so now I'm in fear that he's going to say something to me about telling her, which he did a couple of days later, because I'd dodge him every time. And he asked me why, and I said, because I wanted you to stop. And that was it, really. I mean, it just kind of ended right there.
So let's move into your teenage years, your adolescence. You, I assume, started liking boys. You were going through puberty. You grew into this teenager like everybody else, going to school. Who did you become during those teenage years?
I was very kind of reserved. I really didn't get close to anybody. I don't know actually if it was fear of that sexual part of it. I just didn't get, I was kind of off. I was one of those children that was just off to the side.
So you were more introverted? You just wanted to be left alone by yourself?
And I still find myself that way sometimes too.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I kind of like being by myself occasionally.
Well, for a long time I had to deal with being alone by myself. But I've been alone almost for 10 years, so now it's time for me to rebuild and learn how to live with other people if I want to have a relationship.
Sure.
I didn't become sexually active until I was 18, and then I got pregnant. I lost my first child, and then I had 2 other boys. One lives in Austin, and the other one lives in Tennessee Colony, Texas.
Okay.
And he's my oldest, and I don't know I don't really get to talk to them much. I do write my oldest one a little bit. My other one, my youngest one, right now is doing his own thing, so
Yeah.
I don't really have any contact with him right now.
Yeah. And so going into when you, and I say this, I myself, I was a product of teen pregnancy. I think lots of people think you're sexually abused, so you become sexually active. But sometimes we're just looking for someone to love us and accept us. We
Yes.
feel damaged on the inside. And that first person, we're willing to like just throw ourselves at them and have their babies and make life happily ever after, you know.
Yes.
And still, in some sort of way, I think we think this pain is going to go away.
Yes.
Did eventually the sexual suppression, did it
Yes.
affect your marriage? Did you get married?
I did get married with my first husband. I've been married twice. My first husband, we dated for 8 years, and then we got married, and our marriage didn't last. It's because I got pregnant. I don't know. I mean, I don't know his story. He's deceased right now, but my second husband, that's where all my problems really became evident. Sexual. I felt dirty all the time.
Was he abusive towards you?
No, he was pretty good, but he was an alcoholic, and we just had issues in that area. And of course, you know, I was doing those things too, so
Sure.
it just conflict. I think that was the most part.
And so how did you self-medicate?
I used cocaine, and I drank, and mostly just drank, but I had left my husband, and I just left him and went to Austin, and then Austin, Texas, and then that's where I got really involved with heavy drugs, and I was using intravenously and smoking.
Wow.
Yeah, and one day I was dating.
Are we talking crystal meth? Are we talking?
No, just crack.
So you're shooting crack up now.
No, shooting coke. The
Snorting
powder.
coke.
No.
Shooting coke.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, tell me. Go ahead. Educate me.
Yeah.
here.
Okay. Well, I'll shoot up coke, and it's like a rush, and you know, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to glamorize it, but
Sure.
that's where you get hooked. And then smoking crack was the same way. I mean, you'd get like I don't know how to explain it, just some kind of rush, I guess you call it, like the train coming. You know, you've probably heard that before about a train whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you go for. But every time you go back for seconds, you don't get it like you did the first time.
Do you think that drug choice, those choices, do you think that they had anything to do with being sexually abused?
I think so, because it made me not feel anything. But at that same time too, you know, I lost both of my parents, so I wanted to be numb all the way around.
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't care. I didn't care about my kids either.
Well, and maybe your own life.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's not like putting a gun to your head or taking a bunch of pills or slitting your wrist, what we think suicide is, but essentially,
Yeah, I was
To do
doing a
that
slow death, yeah.
yeah.
And one day I decided, I kept hearing this voice in my head, and it was telling me, give up everything. And I'm like, I don't have anything to give. So it was really kind of funny, because I started giving all my stuff to my neighbor. And then
So instead of giving up the drugs,
Yeah.
you started giving away your
yeah,
possessions.
Yeah, I was giving all away my possessions. And then I went into my closet to get something out, and I go, oh, this is what you want me to give up, my pipe. So I took it and popped it and shoved it in the trash and threw it away, and that was the last time I ever touched it.
And that was how many years ago?
That was over 10 years ago.
Praise the Lord.
So I've been a couple of times in the last, let's see, how could I say this? I was staying with this girl, and she was using, and I came really close just this past year. to relapse
Yeah.
and lose everything. But I
Well,
decided,
here's the thing. I think we live in this culture where everybody thinks that to know God, life has to be perfect.
mm-hmm,
And I always say to everybody, I've known God my whole life. I can look back on being sexually abused and God was right there with me. I knew God.
yes,
I chose not to accept that in a spiritual way. I looked at myself as a human. I looked at myself as a victim. And because of the pain I chose to accept and try to live with and hide from,
mm-hmm,
I too use several things to self-medicate. And so I always I always think it's important for a survivor to share, because when you say I almost relapsed, or another survivor may say I almost had a drink, or another survivor may say, you know, I went crazy and I hired in the masseuse and I was going on a sex binge. You and I understand this, and other survivors will understand this, but many people don't. They think that we're sinners, or we're damaged, or we don't truly know God, or maybe we're being disrespectful to religion or spirituality in some
mm-hmm,
sort of way. But really, that's just real.
yes, yes,
When you grew up in a situation like you, sometimes you can't, you just, if your car won't start and things aren't going your way, you just want to take a breath and step away.
mm-hmm.
So how have you
Well,
beat that and not given to it? Have you stayed obedient?
well, the first thing that I did was I reconnected with a woman that was actually, I was dating her ex-husband, but she had a ministry in Austin, Texas, and I had an opportunity to talk to her, and she invited me to her church, and so I went, and they opened their arms to me, and I'm still connected to that church.
Which is important.
Yes, they're like my
The rock.
Yes, and I stayed and I helped her with the halfway house. She asked me to be the head leader, and they also called me the head angel of the house, because the house was actually called Mary Magdalene. We called her Maggie for short, and we had women that were coming from prison with drug addictions and stuff, and so I had to deal with all their personalities. And so they say, you know, God puts people in your life and he mirrors them, so you see the things that you don't like about yourself, but you see it in somebody else.
Yes.
And so it helped me deal with all my stuff.
So were they asking for your advice? Were they opening up about their childhood, or I say that because we know 90% of incarcerated men and women were sexually abused. I would assume if they're coming into a halfway house out of prison, they're probably dealing with some of the reflection that you're
Yes.
talking about, your own past.
Some women, there was a couple of women that would open up, but there was a few women, there just wasn't ready yet.
They were tough.
Yeah. So I learned a lot there. And then I'd been there like a little over 4 years in that particular house, and I decided I wanted to come back to Victoria and just start over. And so when I came here, I've struggled ever since, but it's been a good struggle.
What do you mean struggle, though, when you say?
Well, I mean,
Are
like
we talking financial?
financial. I've been homeless several times, lived in women's shelters, because I just can't afford to live on my own and be sufficient. I've had a dream, or I think God put it in there a long time ago. We'll go back to my dog grooming thing. I believe that God gave me this career, because I didn't even know there was a dog groomer that existed. Mm-hmm. And I learned how to dog groom by force. I worked at a vet clinic, and the groomer there had quit. And I've been there like 6 months already. And the boss came in there and told me, I need you to groom a dog. And I looked at her, are you crazy? And she says, no, I know you can do this. I have every confidence in you. So that was my first word of encouragement, and that really stuck to me. And these people took me kind of under their wing and helped me with everything that I needed.
So you wanted to talk about your education.
Yes, I started educating myself on why I do the things that I do and why I react the way I react. A lot of it, I believe I was very codependent. But the main thing that I just found out just this past year is, you know, the generational curse. You know, for a long time I hated my grandpa. Like, and that's a strong word to be using, hate. And when he passed away, I felt so guilty because I hated him. Yes. And so that helped me figure out what I needed to do by searching. And so I started doing all this research on generational curses. And I mean, it goes way back to the Bible days. And so you have to break those chains. And in order for me to break those chains, I need to speak up and write it out.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
so you started to study.
yes.
Then you began to write out your story. What were you writing? Your feelings?
My feelings, why I felt the way I did, especially, you know, my sexual relations with other men in my past, how they affected me, and how they're going to affect me if I were to find another partner. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not the same person as I was back then.
So we overcoming sexual abuse, became a product of teen pregnancy.
Yes.
Went on to use multiple drugs.
Yes.
And some alcohol. So how in the world did we get to where you're at after all of that? I mean, the chance you could have been dead. You could have really affected your life physically or, you know, mentally, health-wise. And you're just as spiritual and smart as you can be. So,
well, I believe if it hadn't been for my grandparents on my dad's side, they were the Christians in our family, and they introduced me to Jesus. Mm-hmm. So when I'd go and stay with them. So if I hadn't have known any of that, I don't think I would have ever. I mean, I probably would have met him, but because something was always tugging at me, you know, about a different life. So I just started when I got connected with Hillcrest in Austin, Texas. They'll be glad that I said that.
Yeah.
They're the ones that really showed me who God was.
And Hillcrest
Baptist Church.
Oh, Baptist Church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Southern Baptist.
Oh. That's the hellfire brimstone,
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I was born and raised Southern Baptist. That's a great denomination, though.
Yes, it is.
Good people. You know, everybody serves in a different way. The one thing I found out about, you know, people is we want to say you got to be Baptist, you got to be Catholic, you got to be Pentecostal, you got to be Church of Christ. But the truth is, I believe there's only one God.
Yes.
And He is the creator of all of us.
That's right.
And it's our job, sometimes, like we were saying, in your relationships, in all relationships, we just have to agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, we serve God in the way that we want to, and I think that's why we go to church. So how do you stay connected daily with God?
I believe I stay connected with Him in my sleep, too. I mean, I wake up, I talk to Him. During the day, I'm driving, I talk to Him. I listen to praise music. Sometimes I listen to, you know, church stuff on TV. I am a member. Oh, I'm not a member yet, but I've been going to the Cowboy Church, Trailhead Cowboy Church, and they've opened their arms to me, loving arms, and invited me to everything that they have.
Okay, so I always like to say before we finish, in this new season filming, we started doing something, and all our survivors that we speak with, I like to ask them a question, but I want to tell you thank you for sitting down with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
It means so much to me that you would trust enough just to open up and share your story, because that's probably something you never thought you would do. No,
I never thought I would do this, no.
Yeah, so it takes a brave soul.
Yes.
And you got to have some confidence to do that.
Well, I figured you would help me on that one.
Yes. So I just want to end, and I want to say, Donna, finish this sentence for me. I am
a child of God.
Very good.